Okay, let's go ahead and continue our study. I'm assuming everyone is in fellowship, so we'll just continue right on where we were. And we've been talking about rationale principles, and we talked about how applying these principles result in your spiritual adulthood. It's just as simple as that. And we're in the process of talking about spiritual self-esteem, which is that first stage of spiritual adulthood. And let me just wrap up this real quickly. We talked about how one area of progress when you reach spiritual self-esteem is getting to the point where you begin to love God the Father. You're reciprocating His love for you and becoming to love Him. And the second thing which you're able to do is to let people's attitude toward you roll off your back like water off a duck's back. That's called virtue love, where you have a relaxed mental attitude toward any people you have conflict with, or even those perhaps you may be overly attached to. Another story. But when it comes to loving God, when you reach spiritual self-esteem, your love for God will displace your former focus on yourself. We as human beings naturally focus on ourselves instead of God. And of course this is tantamount to one of those terrible things, self-absorption. If you fail to love God, that is failure to move into spiritual adulthood, you're going to find yourself being very vulnerable to arrogance. And of course you know where that'll end you up. When you are in spiritual self-esteem, you come to recognize that your emotions should never be the basis for either your spiritual life or just your life in general. There are certain denominations that do emphasize the emotions as being the criteria for their spiritual life. As a matter of fact, on the bulletin board at work, someone just put up something about some church that deals in nothing but fun. Spirituality is fun. You talk about emotionalism. Yeah, it should be, spiritual life is certainly fun in one aspect, but not the way the hoi polloi sees fun. But when you find yourself able to subordinate your emotions to your intellect, you find yourself taking on a bit of sophistication in your spiritual life. Also reaching this area of this status of spiritual self-esteem, you'll find yourself not being threatened anymore by people coming up against you, by malice, revenge, vilification, someone talking about you, gossiping about you, or violence. Obviously, why not? Your confidence is in the Lord and His protection of you. You will also, if you're really into spiritual self-esteem, you'll continue to make Bible doctrine the number one priority of your life, and then you will, in this situation, be fulfilling the mandate of Philippians 3:16. You'll keep on advancing in the ranks by the same system. In the ranks, along with other believers who are sitting in the congregation with you. By the same system, we've talked quite a bit about the plan of God and the various systems He's given to us, so that's no surprise there. Another aspect, a wonderful thing about spiritual self-esteem, is that you're going to find yourself no longer discouraged by setbacks in life. As a matter of fact, God will give you setbacks in life just to test where your emphasis in life is. Make you bring those rationales out and apply them. So you're going to find yourself having a wonderful freedom from self-pity. Now you can define self-pity, I suppose, as the thumb-sucking part of self-absorption. That's exactly what self-pity is. Middle thumb-sucking. You also begin to experience an effective harmonizing of your problem-solving devices. We've illustrated that what the harmonizing of your problem-solving devices is like. I believe it's a destroyer in the U.S. Navy. They have these wonderful weapon arrays. A missile comes toward it, and this thing locks on the missile by radar. And I guess there'll be almost 1,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition heading out to greet that missile. Every one of those 50 rounds is headed in the same direction, going at the same speed to bring that missile down. It's exactly how your problem-solving devices will function. Just like those weapon array, you'll be able to throw everything you have at it, and you'll have solved your problem before it even gets close to you. Okay, so by now I think we have a good idea of what spiritual self-esteem is about. It is a wonderfully exciting part of life, time of life. Now the next stage of spiritual adulthood is spiritual autonomy. And this is where your self-confidence, not spiritual confidence, where your self-confidence is parlayed into cognitive independence in using doctrinal rationales. In other words, you are now applying these doctrinal rationales from a stable viewpoint, and you're doing it yourself and have great confidence from it. The spiritual autonomy, in this stage, you have a continuation and not a continuation, but more of an introduction and an understanding and an experience of contentment. And this contentment comes from, well, now you have capacity for God to share His happiness with you. So this contentment doesn't come from the accoutrements of life, even from things that God may bless you with, but they come from God because He is sharing His happiness with you. This is the joy that is unexplainable. And this becomes a major problem-solving device in your life. This contentment is tantamount for your capacity for happiness, for your tranquility of soul in every circumstance of life. Again, whether adversity or prosperity. Yes, I understand that even those in financial prosperity can have a lot of problems which would cause one to gnash their teeth. Ooh, I just lost a bunch of money in the stock market. Oh, should I invest in that, invest in this? I fortunately don't have those problems. But in this stage of spiritual growth, you'll find that it's characterized by a wonderful increase of your plus H, that is the happiness that God is sharing with you, and it gains a lot more momentum in spiritual autonomy. It, of course, reaches its peak when you get to spiritual maturity. But when God shares His happiness with you, you're going to have the ability to be happy with or without prosperity, with or without that jacuzzi, with... I'm sorry, was I speaking out of line there? But the happiness, of course, also bleeds over into adversity. And that's one thing to experience, where adversity is coming at you. And frankly, it's not that you don't give a rip. You're happy during it. And because you're happy when you're facing adversity, you've got your thinking, and you can think your way through the adversity, applying your doctrine and not get all emotional about it. And when you're in spiritual self-esteem, you have the solution to all the problems people always have. And these problems inevitably cause us to become slaves to our circumstances. So now you're released from your slavery to circumstances. In spiritual autonomy, you have a much stronger and increased contentment and capacity for life, a capacity for happiness. And this results from combining your spiritual self-esteem with, you guessed it, your first introduction to suffering. Providential, preventative suffering. I mentioned that when you're in self-esteem, you are unstable. Well, God then introduces you to various levels of suffering, which Colonel Thiem has defined as providential, preventative suffering. Prevents you from getting fat-headed. It prevents you from being unstable. It brings you testing, suffering in just the right increment to where you can apply your problem-solving devices, gain confidence from them, and gain stability from that confidence. And you see your spiritual life and these rationales that are circulating in your thinking start to work. You're going to have a strong and real entrenched contentment, one which will not be disturbed by repeatedly getting into the arrogance complex of sins, which to a degree characterizes spiritual self-esteem. One other key to this contentment is that you now have a much stronger virtue love toward people. Their imperfections and mistakes will not be a source of unhappiness to you. So it is a wonderfully stabilizing period of your spiritual life. Next stage of spiritual adulthood is spiritual maturity. This, folks, is where you've arrived. This is the function of, I love this, cognitive, of course, is what's circulating through your thinking. Cognitive invincibility. You have got that shield of faith up, and there's no one getting through it. You are now using your doctrinal rationales in full bore. Now, from the addition of the doctrines that you've been taking in, your problem-solving devices